100 hands reverse the law. Phase 1 set, now put on pause. They claimed the grid could not endure and fed the myth of power pure. The fuel was buried, not the plan. It only waits for votes to stand. From all they stacked the vessels deep. Tea hands ran long though did not sleep. No chant was sung, no grave was raised. Just softer lights in western bays. A farmer passed through fields unclaimed. No one asked what was in name. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground. Not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, soul that's clean. Ballots cast, the elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last. But the river learns too fast. They wrote it down in 23, then turned the page before the plea. The pause they pitched became a door, a lease renewed without a floor. The mask was spun in policy, but no one asked the river.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another show. It's the 18th of May. It's Nuclear Belgium. And you can find it over at James Luce's site on YouTube. I hope everybody's doing well on this Sunday. Should nuclear power be banned worldwide, considering Fukushima as an extinction level event? I think so. How about you? This is a video, this was an experiment rather, in 1953 by the nuclear academics who love you so much. This person would have died shortly after this video. This is the same kind of radiation at Nagasaki, Hiroshima, so this was absurd doses. Actually left a shadow on the wall. And the industry knew that. The industry knew he would die that day. That's all they're good for, is destroying. They're not good for anything else. In fact, their entire legacy is predicated upon that. It was 25 ships in Operation Tamagotchi. This was American ships that went down to help the victims of the tsunami. And there was around 12 of the helicopters. They had to change the engines in them because they were so radioactive. They're not scrubbing the deck because it's like a banana and a potato chip, by the way. We got another show, headlines. There's some really good stuff here tonight. We typed out a bunch of them, and because I haven't used them before in the description, so the description has got some of them. There's around 140, so we better get after it. An early show, I wasn't going to do a show, and I was just burnt out. I was working away, and then I changed direction and made another show. I was just so burnt out, and then I said I should download that Nuclear Belgium song from James's site. And as soon as I listened to it, I was like, I got to do a show. Some strange how that works, isn't it? Isn't that a wonderful thing, though? To something so simple. I mean, it was less than 15 seconds of listening to the song, and I was like, I'm going to do a show. I was really, I've seen that so many times now. That time it was an accident. I was just downloading the song because I really liked that song last night. It was amazing. He's got so many songs like that. It's unreal. Another fight with my glasses night. I'm Dana. You know the rest, I hope. You can call into these live shows at 709-589-4406. All lines are currently open. Probably will be for the rest of the show. Here we go. Strap yourselves in and hang on tight. It's a good show. We got a really good show for everybody tonight. We're going to go into the big shut screen. Make sure everything's good on my side before I start. Nuclear fission may also be happening in reactor 1 and 3. Press conference. Curium, which is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods, not iodine, not cesium. NHK, which is a huge media in Japan, basically the government media. Curium 242, 244 are to blame for the spontaneous nuclear fission at reactor number 2, not uranium. Always takes a second. I should probably sing a few songs before I go live just to get my throat kind of warmed up. Because I noticed that now lately a lot. I got a dry throat for the first 5 minutes or something. I was hitting it with water. That's not enough, right? I do this again. At number 2, not uranium. So which meant they already had a meltdown, and because the Curium isotope now is the biggest byproduct, you had a spontaneous nuclear fission, a criticality, which is something. When the chain reaction stops, now this is in the fuel pools that have melted down, by the way, they're talking about. Americium 241 plutonium detected in all soil samples off the Fukushima coast. TEPCO says they're not caused by the meltdowns. But I mean, why would you exclude that stuff when you have explosions and meltdowns galore? Right? How can you exclude it after this happens to 4 of your reactors? And when it's very visible, so why would you deny it? Well, that's the policy of the industry from day one. There has, and you'll see this coming up in some of these headlines, that's what makes these headlines so important, because this is the original story, and they didn't quite have the cover story nailed down yet, and that was orchestrated by the International Atomic Energy Agency. They control the narratives. No matter where there's a nuclear event, they're the ones that are going to come out. And then those countries are expected to donate huge amounts of money. Japan just donated 14.6 million on this anniversary, 19 million on the last anniversary. European dollars, right? Not yen. Top government nuclear official warned that Tokyo may have to be evacuated. Now we got tons of headlines based over 2 years where they were significantly considering moving Tokyo away, the capital. And they were even looking at India at one point. Fukushima unprecedented in scope, and the situation appears utterly beyond human control. Once the reactors explode, as soon as the first one exploded, reactor 1, you had 9 reactor cores falling all over the site. You can't go back and do something and survive it. This is definitely a case where a dead man tells no tales. A raging fire in the spent fuel pool, yet claims only a partial meltdown. That's the fuel pools actually ejected right out of the building and the reactor core, right out of the building. So 9 reactor cores in each building is missing. They're not missing, they covered the entire planet and has now caused an extinction event. NHK shows Curium detection 100 kilometers from Fukushima. Professor, wind blew this way and radiation levels were as high as Fukushima City. Yet Fukushima City is still occupied. Fukushima City, every house there, and Curium City, which is around 300,000 people too, is entitled to be decommissioned or decontaminated. But you can't decontaminate anything, let alone a house. How can you decontaminate a building? It's absurd to suggest you can. Post-Fukushima report concerns over plutonium and uranium being deposited and reconcentrating far away. The isotopes transfer to land via sea spray, aerosol, flooding, human exposure by inhalation. The food is contaminated, the water is contaminated, the air is contaminated, and direct contact. Highly significant quality of fission products are flushed into the environment by water used as Fukushima molten fuel, including plutonium and curium. Radioactivity recirculate for many generations in the ocean food chain. And of course, meat will increase the dose over the through bioaccumulation over a short period of time. And it's permanent. Government tells company to conceal information on radioactive tea leaves because of public anxiety. Did you hire a government to do stuff like that? Would you hire a government to cover up? And, every country that has nuclear also has a radiation team that's supposed to detect radiation. And there, you gave them the authority, the monetary, the education, everything else, the equipment. And when you finally have an event, then they all cut your throat and say it didn't happen. How can you ever let that slide? How can you ever not hold them accountable? How does that work in people's minds, I wonder? How do you sit in silence and allow that to be covered up? Radioactive tea above legal limits, southwest of Tokyo, by the way, is towards Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and Fukushima is the other way, to the north. So, Tokyo should never be inhabitable again. The radiation that was there is unbelievable. And if you watch last night's show, then you can appreciate it a bit more if you're not too familiar with the subject. High radioactive particles in Seattle at 50% of the levels in Tokyo. And Tokyo was brutal. At 29 million, in just one study of a rainfall, 29 million atoms per square meter. These are just absurd numbers. It's impossible not to get sick. Latches onto the lung tissue, and it's not just cancer, there's many illnesses and diseases. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. It's 2 billion times like an atom, and man-made atom. It's not the stuff you see from the solar system. The body doesn't know what it is. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And the best way to appreciate an atom is you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you still couldn't see it. Just one of them is enough to trigger a permanent autoimmune defense in your body. Your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells and eventually builds a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor, right? And the majority of tumors that people have, you can trace it all the way back to the nuclear industry. Right back for the last 80 years, that's when you've seen the epidemic of cancer. Average person in Seattle breathed in 10 hot radioactive particles, which is way worse than the physical atoms, a day during April. And everything from a nuclear meltdown is a hot atom, a hot particle. Japan bans radioactive green tea from an area 40 miles southwest of Tokyo. We have just an absurd amount of that documentation southwest of Tokyo. And consider Tokyo, in context of Fukushima, half the country. These are big prefectures on that side, to the north side of Tokyo. Tokyo is 36 million people, metropolitan Tokyo. If you go to Tokyo, you're an idiot. After watching this stuff, you're literally an idiot if you go to Japan. But if you go to Tokyo, you're a moron. Ozawa, we may not be able to live in Japan someday. Well, no. Within a week, you should have left Japan. If you didn't leave Japan, there was 865,000 extra cancers in just the first year, for goodness sakes. It's 13,646 children out of 38,200 that had thyroid tumors, for goodness sakes. It used to be 1 in a million. So 358,000 out of a million, if you scaled it up today. Or in 2012, I should say. Radiation going to be flowing out. That's the proper word, flowing. Not anybody that says the word leak in context of these nuclear meltdowns, if it's a male, kick him in the nuts. You got every right to do it. If we do nothing, even Tokyo could become off limits. No, there is nothing you can do. It's a nuclear meltdown. It's just, it doesn't matter how brave or stoic somebody is. Your organs melt. I can tell you the outcome of that experience. It's a very graphic experience. You don't want to know. I can trust me. This is 23 days of radioactive fallout in a French study of Fukushima. That's reactor 3 detonating, ejecting the fuel pool and the reactor cores right out of the buildings. That's a no man's land after that. Anybody goes in there is a lethal dose. Nuclear super typhoon. Massive storm may approach Fukushima this weekend. Current gust of 195 miles per hour. That was 2 months after Fukushima. So it brings a huge amount of rain. This was March the 15th. This is 2 months before that, right? This is day 5. And these are huge amounts because you had 36 reactor cores at the top of 4 of these buildings and 8 of the fuel pools. There's 2 fuel pools at the top of each building. And so this is huge radioactive fallout. And so when a typhoon came in 2 months later, the whole country is contaminated. You had all, which is now still on the surface because it's only 2 months. You had a typhoon, which is copious amounts of rain, washing huge amounts of this out into the Pacific Ocean on top of what already just happened. Right? So that was a catastrophic event on its own. If nothing got into the ocean before that, which is impossible, of course, as you know, but let's just say nothing got into the ocean during all the meltdowns, despite the fact you're right on the ocean. Unlike Chernobyl, where you're 600 miles away. Fukushima, you're right on the ocean. But just say nothing got into the ocean. When you have a typhoon washing all the radioactive fallout into the ocean, that's probably enough to kill the Pacific Ocean within a year on its own merit. So imagine the significance of what happened. Like each of these reactors was equal to at least 100 Chernobyls. They were pure uranium, pure plutonium. They were massive reactor cores. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It was a brand new reactor. It didn't have spent fuel pools at the top of the buildings. Whereas these are pure uranium, pure plutonium. Reactor 3, the really deformed looking one down there, is plutonium mixed oxide, reclaimed uranium plutonium. It's a curse on humanity on its own. Washington Post, surprise, 2 more reactors melted down. TEPCO conveniently left that part out of the story. 2 more reactors melted down, May the 24th. This is almost 3 months later. 2 more reactors melted down and TEPCO conveniently left that part out of the story. Think about that statement. Never forget. Reactor 1, so they just talked about 2 more. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the lowest forms of life in humanity's experience, the scum of the scum, the degenerate of degenerates, was informed in March that number 1 reactor core started melting down about 50 minutes after the cooling stopped, so before the tsunami got there. Melted pile of fuel in 3.5 hours. It shifted the country by 2.5 meters, which separated the water intake, so everything was going to melt down anyway. A melted pile of fuel in 3.5 hours. Well, when it melts down, it's 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. We got nothing to contain that temperature. So melted means it's gone straight down into the earth. And within 24 hours, that building detonated. And I showed you that picture earlier. Tokyo tap water in crisis comes from an area that is as radioactive as Chernobyl contaminated area at 100,000 to 300,000 atoms per kilogram. So when you see Becquerel, BQ, something has to create, which is a pulse of energy every second from an atom. So you need an atom to make a Becquerel. And the reason they do it this way is to confuse you. So when you see 100,000 to 300,000 Becquerels, you should be thinking 100,000 to 300,000 physical atoms, anthropogenic man-made atoms, that are catastrophic to everything with replicating cells, pulsing energy every second at the speed of light. We have unleashed a monster for 80 years now, but when Fukushima happened, this was an event. It's the equivalent to getting hit by a meteorite, except it takes a few decades before the damage starts manifesting, and then over the next few decades, this is an extinction event. In the first decade, the research, and we showed you quite a bit of that last night, this is an extinction event, right? From the research expeditions we've done for 6 years, and which was an enormous toll on my health. I wasn't healthy to begin with. TEPCO uses radioactive water from reactor number 5 and number 6 to spray throughout the Fukushima plant. Again, how do you do that when the reactor's exploded? How do you go close enough to spray something on the reactors? You don't. You can't. It doesn't work that way. And once the reactors explode, you're into uncharted territories. Once multiple reactors explode, this is unprecedented, unheard of. That's only 2 of the 4 reactors. Buildings, entire buildings are gone. Each building had 9 reactor cores roughly in them. I was working on another show last night and all day today, and then I switched gears and started doing another show, and then I was burnt out, of course, right? And so we're doing an early show, because otherwise there'll be no show. And I'm doing everything I can to try to keep this whole operation moving, right? Like, it's very difficult. This stuff is so difficult, the whole process. And just the live streams, it's so much easier just to shoot a show and post a video. The idea of live is so people can say, what, this is still a thing? In the hopes that the world will come to its senses? So the policymakers and investors can say to themselves, well, he done that live, let's have a look at it. And then they see hopefully a professional setup, and that'll keep them around for a few more minutes, and then boom, we have a conversion from pro-nuclear to anti-nuclear every time. There's nobody going to watch my show and walk away pro-nuclear, okay? Just never going to happen. Never going to happen under any circumstances. Oh, I sometimes I'll stop the stream, doing the stream for a few moments, just so I can get my throat to. I do have another flask of hot tea, because like lukewarm tea doesn't cut the dust from your throat, so to speak. And I'll try to remember to turn the volume down when I'm drinking, because some weird sounds. So high radiation levels around the plant prevented the helicopters from dumping water on the spent fuel rods at Fukushima. High levels of radiation. And the reason it was so high is because you ejected the reactor core and the fuel pools with 8 reactor cores in each building all over the site. And so this much of it, if you run past it, it'll kill you. So imagine 12 million pounds of it all over the site. It's non-survivable, see? Helicopters couldn't even go in there and dump water. All 600 helicopter pilots at Chernobyl died doing the same thing, by the way. Residents forced to dump nuclear waste in parks and forests. Writers. You don't have a plan, right? Well, just dump it in the parks or in the forest. So the forests and the parks now are already incredibly radioactive, can't be decontaminated. And they were taken, you're supposed to leave. You're not supposed to dump your nuclear waste in parks and forests. If you got nuclear waste, this is not like picking up leaves in the fall, okay? This is nuclear fallout. You got to leave. You don't stay there. There's an absurd amount of health issues associated with staying there that nobody has an autoimmune trigger that can defend against it, so why stay there? You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. It's extremely regrettable. Fukushima workers report dumping radioactive waste from the beginning. Fukushima, and you'll always hear that terminology, Fukushima workers. These are homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. You get the picture, right? This is not nuclear academics. This is not nuclear students. And the nuclear students, all nuclear students at a university should have to go there. Because the minute they graduate, they're going to cut your throat, okay? Even before that, and like we have many examples of that, where they make TikTok videos and come out and lie to you. Radiation in too high. Oh, by the way, Taiwan just shut down its... Well, today officially, because it takes a day or something to go into cold shutdown. It got shut down yesterday, Saturday, their time. I'm not sure. I think they're like 12 hours ahead of us, though, aren't they? So it's definitely shut down at this time here in the northern hemisphere in North America. The last reactor. And boy, there's been a lot of controversy over Taiwan over the years, hasn't it? They're still importing food from the nuclear wasteland. And we fought that for 6 days straight when they had that referendum. They won the referendum to ban the food. It was only good for 2 years. They never had another referendum. A politician signed a piece of paper in Japan now, started shipping lethal food from a nuclear wasteland. Radiation too high from TEPCO personnel to stay in the Fukushima nuclear plant control room March the 15th. When reactor 1 detonated, which was the next day on the 12th, you are not going in the control rooms. Once the tsunami ran through the site, why are you going to be going into a control room? Everything was wiped out. You have nothing functional in the entire site once the tsunami ran through the site. Let me just get myself set up a bit better. Is there such a thing as a bit better, I wonder? Well, it's like the tsunami. Once the tsunami ran through the country, and it ran through Fukushima, I'll show you a picture of that. Here you go. Once that recedes, that came in there at 500 miles per hour. That's what a country looks like that. And like this. You're not going into control rooms anyway because reactor 1 on the 12th had detonated. And so did reactor 3. They weren't in the control room. There is nothing to control, right? Everything was destroyed. Radiation now triple May levels. But it's really something, though, the lies that this industry told. Radiation now triple May's levels in Soma City, Nida River, double for Mano River, November. And so when you have the typhoons, then a lot of it gets washed to the rivers, and the rivers, of course, are catastrophic numbers, and the fish are too, right? I'm just going to turn the volume down for 1 second and slurp some tea here. That's a little bit hot. Better leave that alone for a second. Fukushima government is dumping tons of radioactive mud from decontamination to the river every night. This is different headlines, different places. Japan professor, 25 times more Fukushima fallout detected in Tokyo Bay mud than the maximum levels found in nearby lake after the nuclear bomb explosions. Cesium flows in the rivers won't peak for another 1 or 2 years. Well, after 1,000-day strontium peaks for tens of thousands of days, and the ratio is 100 to 1 for strontium 90 to cesium 137. Because it's a meltdown. See, the meltdown never stops destroying humanity and the 8 million species. The snow that would never melt begins falling. It's not a snow, it's radioactive flakes. Each flake bringing down cesium and uranium and plutonium and Americium and neptunium and strontium and Curium isotopes. Of 300,000 people 60 kilometers from the meltdown, that's Fukushima City. Curium City is a bit closer, so it was the same attributes. All the cities were the same attributes. Radiation, and it didn't evacuate them because it's a scumbag industry. There really isn't anybody good in the nuclear industry. You're not getting a job if you're a good person. Radiation data from Seattle area survey, which was at 450, it got leaked out, right? 450,000 counts per minute of xenon-133. So you can extrapolate all kinds of other isotopes. Like there will never be a plume of just a single isotope. It doesn't work. If there's one isotope there, there's probably 1,000 different isotopes in the same sample. But it depends on which single is the strongest. That'll drown out the other singles, the other isotopes. Radiation data from Seattle area survey may be withheld by the feds for national security purposes. And like my Geiger counter you see up there, that's only going to measure gamma. So if I got Curium or uranium or Americium or Neptunium or plutonium, or it's not going to register. And you can't have gamma without alphas, betas, neutrons, and X-rays. Excuse me, and X-rays. Locals near Tokyo unable to handle such a high level of radiation. It was 29 million atoms. You don't measure it in microsieverts like they're doing there. When you're far away, you measure it in physical atoms, which would sound like in that context, we have numbers of 29 million atoms per square meter of cesium-137. Multiply that by 100 for the strontium-90. And the list goes on and on. Such a high level of radiation. Cesium clouds spread over many areas of the capitals. Well, it spread everywhere, the whole entire planet. I showed you, like this model from France is 1 million to 10 million. This is 23 days in of radioactive fallout covering the entire planet. This is 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima numbers. So this could be 10, 20, 30, 40 million atoms per cubic centimeter of air cesium-137, covering the entire planet in less than 23 days. This was a study. This is not a projection. This is an actual study from the French government. This is Al Jazeera, 30 million tons. They've upped it to 60 million now, right? Let me play that video. Play that video. I'll try another slurp of that tea there. I got the lid off it. Probably safe now. Nasty censorship on me again yesterday, eh? Yeah, 60 million one-ton bags. I'm going to turn the volume down. And I'm going to have to adjust it. I might restart it.
There's about 60 million tons
I'll restart it.
of contaminated soil. There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. So
it's not outside, like he's a bit confused. It's not outside the fence per se, right? This stuff is picked up outside the fence. This is not the site itself. This is not Fukushima nuclear plant, 60 million one-ton bags. This is the communities with 60 million one-ton bags. But Al Jazeera, now I actually have the documentation, right, to quantify the 30 million tons, one-ton black bags. Public authorities avoid details that may trigger alarm or panic. They don't want to go there, says former advisor to U.S. Secretary of Energy. Avoiding details that may trigger alarm or panic. So you know why, like North America, a nuclear plant might have 150 sirens within 10 miles of it. The idea is if they have a release, they'll set that off, you turn on your radio and you know which way to run away in, right? But if it happens, they're never going to use the sirens, just like Japan. They're never going to warn you. It's disgusting on top of that. Because the taxpayers, one of the systems the taxpayers paid for to protect themselves was called a speedy modeling system. And in 1 month, they had made 5,500 models of the radioactive fallout from data, and they didn't release it to the public. They gave it to the American military stationed in Japan. These are the people that are doing this. They're calling them authorities. These are not authorities. These are criminals. What they done. And this is only 14 years ago. These people should be held accountable. Radiation expert is terrifying how the Pacific ecosystem has collapsed since Fukushima. Plutonium uranium suspected spreading throughout the food chain. It's not just plutonium uranium. Of course, the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel rods is the Curium isotopes. So we already talked about this a couple times, so we might as well come back. Talked about the research we've done for 6 years. From Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. This is a short version of it. So I launched research expeditions. Reminiscent. I launched research expeditions for 6 years in the Pacific Ocean, 4 to 5 months a year. And there's 27,000 islands. And so I just took my time and meandered and done the research. And so we're looking for the species to your left. They were exterminated. This is exterminated. They didn't come back. We went back for 5 more years. And nobody else is going to show you this documentation. That's the frightening, most terrifying part of this story. We had so much documentation, we want to go out and identify it ourselves. And because I was an ex-commercial diver, I'm very familiar with all of these species. And they're gone. And they blamed it on tumor, cancer. Cancer was jumping from one species to another species, from snails to starfish, to abalone, to shellfish, to algae, to invertebrates without the backbones, to the 480 species of worms. Like, the whole story is insane, blaming the death of all of these species on cancer mutation, allowing cancer to spread from one species to another like a virus. Have you ever heard of anything like that? Have you ever heard of starfish getting cancer? Have you ever heard of kelp and algae and coral and shellfish and abalone and oysters and snails and mollusks and scallops, razorback clams, manillas, little neck clams, and all this other stuff getting cancer? You ever heard anything like that in your life? No, but you heard about it post-Fukushima. And that's what they blamed the die-off of the species on. But they didn't acknowledge that the species to your left are exterminated. I went out and done the research expeditions for 6 years. And the pictures I might show you, everything seems pretty... Oh, looks like a great time Dana's having there, right? Oh, yeah, Dana's having a wonderful time. Look at that, boys. He's just having a ball out there. It's not. Typically, this is kind of your typical day. That's what it looked like right there. It was usually very terrible weather. This is your typical day, right? Miserable, soaking wet. There was some good days, don't get me wrong, but your average day is nasty. Just, it's a tough gig, eh? Of course, you can't see much when I show you that stuff, so I'll show you stuff like this. Nuclear Belgium. Da, da, da. So we had a lot of documentation. Don't try this at home. Two different controllers. So I got a drone up in the air and a drone in the water. And you see me go like, I'm starting to lose my mind because And so when the tides were high, I would do that a lot, right? Because low tide, you can go to the beaches and see if the species. You had a 19-foot tide exchange up there. Woo! Well, I'd done my best, right? I hit this every direction possible. Just to... we're going to jump back in the headlines here in a second. I want you to think about this headline here. Radiation levels in the United States West Coast spiked. Spiked. So this is not a conjecture, right? This is not an opinion. This is the French government experts on nuclear radiation. For the Ministry of the Defense, the Environment Industry Research, IRSN, contamination of the environment, 1 million times normal to 10 million times of cesium-137 of pre-Fukushima numbers. Here's the model. This model is based on 31 days of radioactive fallout when it stops. Right now you're at day 10 or something. A radioactive fallout, day 20 coming up, day 20 right there, radioactive fallout. This is a study. And so pretending this has never happened, good for you, congratulations. Remember, the food was banned by 55 countries and 14 prefectures, but clearly you should have banned it, everything from Japan. It wasn't just cesium, by the way. This is a 20-day model of plutonium. This is a 20-day model of neptunium-239, which after 2.5 days starts to decay to plutonium-239. Plutonium-239. Plutonium itself is named after the devil. So, British Columbia is the Rocky Mountains, the tropical rainforest. Where does a lot of the radiation wash to right away? To the coastlines. And so they're exposed twice a day at high tide. And there was 30,000 insects. They're gone also. And there's no smell on the beaches when you're there because there's not, like the pictures to your right are the pictures, my research. The species didn't come back. And if you plowed in a healthy coastline, the species on both sides and deeper will just fill up the gap within a couple of days. After 5 years of going back and forth, the species never came back. What does that tell us? It's an extinction event. You don't want to eat the food from Japan. All of these communities, you can see cesium-137 in this line here. And the second line to you from your left is the population of each of the communities. They should have all been abandoned, those communities. And these numbers were by unclear, United Nations scientific effect on the health. The species were wiped out on top of this. The whales are all emaciated. That was gray whales, 10,350 emaciated gray whales. Same thing with the humpback whales. And the 7,000 humpback whales, did they starve to death? Yeah, because radiation covered the entire planet. But that was after 5 years of an unusual mortality event. There was an extra 7,000 humpback whales. But there was an unusual mortality event for more than you see here. North Atlantic right whales, mink whales. Excuse me. All beak whales, there was 1,000 that they found, which is considered 10% of what would have died. The puffins are gone. There's 10 billion snow crabs in Alaska just disappeared overnight, which is 4 times the entire harvest of the legacy. Yeah, 4 times the combined total of snow crabs harvested by the fishery since the 70s. We're in real trouble, and everybody's living in denial, and that's simply not acceptable. You got to snap out of it. We're in real trouble. This is an event. We have to deal with it, and honesty is a great way to start. Worse than a meltdown, spent nuclear fuel pool catches fire. Well, the reason they catch fire, once you catch fire, they're going to burn at just 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And there's a huge inventory, 8 reactor cores. And so that's just going to boil off whatever water's left. It doesn't really matter if water's there because a chain reaction doesn't need oxygen. So it'll burn underwater as well as it'll burn above water. But once the water goes below, the fuel rods themselves, the zirconium cladding will catch fire because of oxygen. So it's important. Let's keep her rolling here. We're just going to do these headlines. We're going to call it a night and just recoup for the Moral Night show, which I already got the show ready. I got a really good show. We got a 24-hour news cycle for the Moral Night, and we got some big stories to cover. Eerie fog of silence around Fukushima. First surprising thing is there's no sounds in a no-go zone. There's no sounds here. This is a no-go zone, too. A no-go zone is a nuclear wasteland. Animals suddenly died on the West Coast right after 2011 disaster. The whole world noticed this strange phenomenon. Fatally high levels of radioactive material has entered the ocean. Fatally high levels of radioactive material have entered the ocean. The official stories is nothing was released. Right, that's the official story. Everything I'm showing you is not the official story anymore. They changed that on August 24, 2023. The new cover-up came out. They said the reactors didn't melt down, nothing got out, everything's contained. And I'm fear-mongering. Well, they won't even acknowledge me, clearly. Mutations in nearly every fir tree by a Fukushima plant. Insects are missing legs, crooked. Abnormalities also found in monkeys, fish, frogs, and all the other species that were still around. Very few insects, only 2 birds. That was TV. Mutations in all the plants is incredibly documented, eh? Massive die-off reported in the Pacific Ocean. Officials, no fish out there anywhere over a very large area. 2017, I was out doing research expeditions. I was reporting on all of that at that point, right? For quite a few years up to that point. Hang on here, I gotta... I'll play this smarter. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. Well, we broke the food chain, see? My apologies. Hay fever or something, a bit stuffed up here all of a sudden. I might have to play a little video and go clean my sinuses here in a minute. No fish out there anywhere over a very large area. Where's the food? Total failure in reproduction, like nothing we've ever observed before. Massive die-off reported in the Pacific Ocean. It's not just the Pacific, unfortunately, right? I see incredible censorship again tonight, every night. Little censorship, 10 people. I know I've only been doing it for over a decade, this desperate live stream. Should nuclear power be banned worldwide considering Fukushima is causing an extinction level event? And I quantified that with the documentation a few minutes back if you're just joining us. Radioactive cloud hit the U.S. aircraft carrier sailing in the Pacific. That's the USS Ronald Reagan. Helicopters were coated with radiation. At one point, they were within a kilometer of the meltdowns. And here's the official Pentagon announcement. Causing crew members on deck to receive a month's worth of radiation in about an hour. Do you got any idea how far that is from science? like when they talk about a natural radiation dose, there is no natural radiation dose. We're already acclimated to all radiation, so-called radiation on the planet through genetic superior selection. That's why we exist. We live in harmony with it, right? It's completely innocuous. And so your body has around 7,500 atoms of potassium, say, right? But you can't get 7,600 atoms of potassium in your body because that's what your body's limit is. It doesn't need any more. It's a natural function, see? Everything got potassium in it on top of that. And you can't make a dirty bomb out of 1 billion pounds of potassium. You can eat potassium, raw potassium all day long. It can't hurt you. And it can't bioaccumulate in you. Natural stuff doesn't bioaccumulate. Only man-made stuff can bioaccumulate. It's very offensive. Just give me 1 second, and I'll show you what I mean by that. Stupid. Here we go. I'm going to show you the difference between man-made and natural. So, man-made, a curry, just 37 billion atoms. Man-made. And so there's 88 curries of cesium-137 for a gram. For potassium, it's 0.000071 curries per gram. It's 71 10 millionths of a curry per gram. 71 10 millionths. And it's still irrelevant, right? It's natural. It's harmless. It's stupid every day. And they conflated this to confuse. It's very effective for confusing people. And then it's weaponized then to misrepresent what's really going on with the anthropogenic man-made stuff. 71 10 millionths of a curry per gram versus 140 curries, which is 140 times 37 billion of man-made. And only a single atom of man-made can invoke a catastrophic autoimmune trigger in your body, or birds or insects or anything else. Worst wildlife die-off ever recorded anywhere on Earth, underway on the West Coast. And we're not just talking marine die-offs. Yeah, it's a real big deal. Many more species that are getting sick, facing a possibility of an extinction. And they tried to blame it on domoic acid, right? Over and over and over. And we followed through on all of that research. And when the research finally came out, it was always a negative for the domoic acid. And you notice in all, in the first 10 years, the word bird flu was barely ever brought into a conversation, if ever. Now they're trying to blame it. Well, the bird flu is real because your immune system is compromised, all the species. And so they're susceptible to a flu normally would be harmless. All of a sudden now it's catastrophic. I'm just going to play a little short video so I can just go clean my sinuses very quickly. Should I play the Kathleen Higley video? People probably hate that by now. I got so much I could play, but I don't. Let me try something different, maybe. Okay, this was Bill Bouchard. He stepped in for the nuclear regulatory JASCO, who was on his way to give a presentation. So I just chopped it up to give you, because I didn't want to play the whole friggin' 18 minutes or something. And so whenever they asked Bill Bouchard a question, because they kept calling him the expert, he was going to educate all of us, and this was on C-SPAN, right? And I put these pictures, that's stuff I put up, I would imagine, will be on that site. I can't remember her name. It doesn't matter. But he keeps saying he'd rather not comment, but he's the expert. I'm going to adjust your volume.
We're here to get a briefing on the ongoing crisis associated with the nuclear power plants in Japan. I'm very privileged that we have the executive director for operations at the NRC here, Bill Borchardt.
I couldn't speculate on that.
An expert, a true expert as well.
Again, I wouldn't wish to speculate.
So we feel very blessed that you could come and stand in until the chairman comes, and we really do welcome you.
Again, I can't
Okay.
speculate.
Well, teaching all of us the lessons that we have to take away from what is happening.
I couldn't speculate on that. What we believe is a significant amount of fuel damage in the three operating reactors, units 1, 2, and 3, which were operating at the time of the earthquake. And then because of the spent fuel problems that are in Unit 4
Right.
of that reactor facility. All of those factors taken into combination, if that same type of source term, that same type of radiological problem existed in the United States, our recommendation to state governments would be to evacuate
Okay.
out to 50 miles.
Well, that's a really good point, because I'm asking you, do you know how many people live within 50 miles of San Onofre nuclear power plant?
I do not know.
Well, I'm going to tell you how many people. 7.4 million people.
7.4 million. I'd rather not say. I'd rather not say. He's the expert here to educate everybody. And I was like, what am I watching? You know, when that... I done perfect, and then I sat here and I touched my glasses. It's all good. Not too bad, hopefully. There we go. Stop it. Isn't that the worst thing ever? Trying to clean your glasses. Those yellow clots are the only thing that actually even works. They still have issues though, right? Because when you get oil on your glasses, you know. I don't need to explain it to you. Let's keep going here. In Japan journalists, I feel people's brains are damaged from radiation is happening faster than we had ever expected. There was a study came out that obesity rates doubled, almost doubled in the first year, which is a marker of radiation brain damage after a nuclear event, right? California fishermen are skunked. Haven't seen a squid. Usually 10,000 pounds a day. Complete crashes at the oyster hatcheries. Sardines, mackerels missing in areas. Pelican sites alarmingly deserted. Record number of 6 sea lions. Drastic plunge in baby California pelicans. 0 born in multiple study areas. The bottom has dropped out from thousands to 10 or less. Unknown why. Because the food chain is broken, right? Just 1% of the usual number of baby California pelicans, nearly complete failure to breed. Only 20 newborns, where they expected at least 10,000. I've never seen anything like it, says the experts. Yeah, and they keep saying that ever since. Experts agree many species of wildlife and fisheries are endangered globally, worldwide, due to large releases into the ocean. It's not just the ocean, it's the airborne, right? It ultimately contaminates all water, period, fresh and salt. And you can argue the case, you can make the case that radiation is meant to kill water on your planet, kill all the fresh water and salt water on your planet, because it's really good at doing that. All the species that are in the water, like the very biota of life itself. Has Fukushima radiation entered New Zealand ecosystem? Of course it has. And let me go back to that for 1 second. A lot of times you got to quantify your statement because the industry will say, why didn't he show you the evidence? He always shows you the evidence. He's lying. He's a liar. That's 23 days of radioactive fallout study. That's a study of the fallout. It's not a projection, it's a study. Cesium-137 per tens of millions per cubic meter of air. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second, by the way. They're all gone. Shock as the sardines vanish. And like these species are keystone species for all kinds of species, right? It's not just one species you're talking about that eats this. They're depending upon it. Fishermen didn't find a single one all summer. This is about the entire Pacific coast, the entire Canada, Mexico, United States coastline. We don't know why the young aren't surviving. Noah, what Noah's doing and continues to do is just, it's evil. How can you ever work for Noah? How can you have no conscience whatsoever? It's terrifying how the Pacific ecosystem, radiation expert, has collapsed since Fukushima. Plutonium and uranium suspected of spreading throughout the food chain. Operation Tamagotchi. It was 25 ships. This one says 16, but it was actually 25, right? 16 United States ships, though, were contaminated with radiation. That's what that 16 was about. Hey, okay, we get all hands on deck. I mean, the bathrooms were all plugged up from the, all their watches, and that headline will come up. All the watches, their digital watches stopped at the same time. Sailors scrubbed the flight deck aboard the aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, following a countermeasure wash down to decontaminate the flight deck. They've actually sandblasted the deck on dry dock 3 different times trying to decontaminate the USS Ronald Reagan, right? In all, 25 ships took part in Operation Tomodachi, the name given for the U.S. humanitarian aid operation. Tsunami reached up to 130 feet. It was actually 140 feet in one place. It came in at 500 miles per hour, so when it rises up, it's horrifying. Plutonium detected in recent California air samples, government report. Fallout from Fukushima nuclear accident made to be blamed. What else could it be? China rejects a ship from California with abnormal radiation. Had only been in Tokyo for a few hours. So when you take all of these headlines, right, and just each on their own is pretty absurd, but when you take all of them, you take yesterday's headlines, same as here, and today's headlines and put them together, holy shit, right? And each one of these headlines, by the way, were based on 5, 6, 7 stories. And they would be linked under the story. And then the consensus of 5 or 6 stories, this is what the headlines were basically being made of. Why are people in full bodysuits and face masks when checking radiation at a water facility in San Francisco? It's got to be, like, some of these headlines tonight, it has to be 5, 6, 7 years since I showed them. We have so much, right? You just... aircraft carrier to get post-Fukushima decontamination. I was alluding to that there earlier. That was done 3 times or 4 times. I thought it was 4 times. It went into dry dock to try to decontaminate. What we have already is the worst case scenario at Fukushima. We'd be like Chernobyl on steroids if the spent fuel catches fire. This is a nuclear engineer who worked at an identical plant. Each reactor holds each reactor building, as far as I know, 3,450 spent fuel assemblies. And this is reactor 3, ejecting the fuel pool out of the building, which is around 8 reactor cores. Worse than a meltdown, a spent nuclear fuel pool catches fire. Like a spent fuel catching fire means an explosion. That's what a spent nuclear fuel pool. grave situation is highly radioactive, mysterious steam and water are released into the ground, sea, and air from Fukushima. TEPCO's entire focus should be to prevent contamination from escaping. An appallingly shoddy handling, glaring ineptitude. The steam in 6 places coming up out of the ground was at 10 sieverts per hour, which was the max that the Geiger counters could register. And say 3 to 4 sieverts is a lethal dose for a human being in proximity. So the steam, this was some of the reactors had went China syndrome deep into the earth, and when they come in contact with water, they detonate, right, so to speak, the water. And the steam now that's going to escape forever is lethal doses, but you can't always see it. You need the right conditions to see it. Water storage nightmare. Bolts in Fukushima tanks will corrode in just a few years. The tanks are empty. The tanks were built to trick people into thinking that they had the water, so-called water, under control, right? They had to account for it. So that's why the tanks were brought in, to account for where the water was going, because they were spraying water on the reactors over the remains of the melted reactor cores. And so that's going to be picking up particulates and fuel particulates. And you can't gather that up and put it in a tank, because you're going to have a criticality in the tank. Not maybe, but for sure, right? Which is what they had done at Mayak, right up in at the head of the Tetra River in the former Soviet Union. And tanks that were bolted together. Now, if you fill up the tanks with this stuff, we're talking 2.2 sieverts of beta in one acknowledgement. You can't just have beta. You got to have alphas, neutrons, and gammas too. So you're talking about a liter just walking past it is a lethal dose to any human on the planet. And so you can't put this in a tank, because you're talking about millions of sieverts in a tank. So you can't build another tank within thousands and thousands of feet. So the fact they have all these tanks gathered together is the proof that the tanks were never filled up with the water, so-called. Not only that, if you have another earthquake, and you will, because it's built on tectonic plates, and the tanks are all joined together for equalization for some strange reason, they say. Which means, you can separate the tanks, and then this water runs out, and you got to get off the site, and you can never get back on the site again. So that was the cover story. The water filtration, like the ELP system, there was other systems. There was the Siri, the Curium, the Areva system, not just the ELP system. None of them can work, because first off, you can never step over the pipes once you start running water through it. You can never change the filter. After 20 minutes, you can't get back in the building, let alone change a filter. It's not like something else. It's not like a water filter at your house or your community, right? Even the water filtration facilities in the communities can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration because it's too radioactive, which means you're supposed to abandon those communities, those cities, the capital. Fukushima reactor site engulfed by steam. This they abandoned the site many times. The homeless did. The academics are not on the site. You're not going to see a nuclear scientist at Fukushima. You can't go out and find a video. It doesn't exist. Right? There's no evidence that a nuclear scientist, and why would they go there? The reactors blew up. Once that happened, you couldn't drag an academic or nuclear scientist to within 100 kilometers of that site. TEPCO radio, and then back to that story, something like steam. It's not steam, it's radioactive death material coming up out of the ground. This is lethal doses. If you were Tarzan, you swing through the steam. Swing. Did I say swings? You're swinging through the steam. You'll die. You'll fall off the rope and die. Helicopter pilots in Chernobyl, for goodness sakes, were falling out of the sky into the reactor buildings. TEPCO emits the radioactive waters flown into the Pacific. All of these people should be prosecuted, and then once they're found guilty, they should get the death penalty, every one of them. It's an abomination on humanity and the 8 million species. These people should be ostracized from humanity, a regular prison, put in their own prison. There should be Nuremberg crimes for these people. This is the BBC. Rupert Winfield Hayes is reporting, and he's talking about all the tanks are full, and this is 2013. I'll be back after this is over. This is really important for this story.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun.
400 tons a day pours in. That's equal to three 8-inch garden hoses, 24 hours a day at 30 pounds per square inch. It's absurdly worse than that. It's like, say, 100,000 tons a day. It's going through that site. Site's built on shale. They brought in shale, built it up. And so if they have a meltdown, they can spray water and the water goes down. Below it is a ancient riverbed, bedrock. So that river is still down there. And so the idea is you spray water on the meltdown, it washes it down into the ocean, down to the riverbed. The riverbed is still there, it washes it out into the Pacific. All nuclear plants have that particular attribute. I just want to go back to TEPCO there for 1 second. There it is.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control.
As the general manager of TEPCO, we understand the water is beyond our control. The official story is nothing I ever showed you in 10 years is true. And the International Atomic Energy Agency is the enemy of every species on this planet, of every human, every child on this planet. Your nemesis is the International Atomic Energy Agency. What they've done is just, it's levels and levels and levels above any evil we've ever experienced on this planet. Nuclear material is flowing into the ocean. It's a grave matter. It's deplorable. Senior Japan official, will you please wake up on this planet? Will you please get your shit together? Will you please get some priorities? Engineer feat yesterday, 5.9 quake may have caused fresh leaks. Every time I hear the word leaks, if there was a nuclear scientist within range, he'd get blasted, I can tell you that much. Piece of shits. Scumbags. Every one of them's just scumbags. People that use the word leak in particular are just the lowest forms of life imaginable. Radiation levels around the plant soars. Melted fuel in reactor number 3 appears to have burned through the pressure vessel. Reactor 3 exploded, for Christ's sakes. Excuse the language. They're just incredibly detestable people. This is reactor 3. Do you really think the reactor core exists, or the fuel pool? Really? Nuclear Belgium. Let me try to explain this another way, maybe. Yeah, it was a hit song last night, man. James came up with, holy shit, what a great song. That's reactor 3. And the fuel pools are at the top of the building, so is the reactor core. They're all underwater. And so reactor 3, there is no top to the building. There's no building. Well, first off, to your right, PIME sees it detonated. When they cleared it away, this is what they were left with. Does that look like it's a 190-foot, 65-meter, 19-story building to anybody? They built this contraption above it. It doesn't physically touch it. And then they claim they're in there getting the fuel out of the pool that doesn't even exist. And when you look at the original, I'd done a presentation on this for the anniversary, March this year's anniversary. So if you go back through my videos, you see a video, 736 mystery pictures. And I put equal amount of pictures that TEPCO had released later on to help articulate. This is, by the way, is a common spent fuel pool. And behind it, that clutter you see there is transport truck containers stacked up, because that's where the tsunami came in on both sides of it. And that had a window that was exposed. It's on the same height, same street as reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can see. You can see they're all redacted. These pictures were released in year 10. And with no explanation, I found them on a Chinese website where I had translated a Fukushima story, and it was nothing important, but anyway, at the bottom of it was links to TEPCO's website, and you can download. And if you go back, if you go to my playlist and find the older video I done of them, you'll get the links are below my videos. You can download the pictures yourself. So I think I've done 3 presentations on these pictures on this particular site. They took down my other site with 25,000 subscribers, 24,800 for 5 years. I didn't gain a subscriber or lose one for 5 years. It was almost 5 years. Sometimes I'll say 4 years, sometimes it's 5 years, but it was just shy of 5 years that I never gained a subscriber or lost one. Kind of like this site, right? International Atomic Energy Agency informed in March the number 1 reactor core melted down after 50 minutes. I showed you that one earlier, by the way. Washington Post surprised 2 more reactors melted down. I showed you that one earlier, too. Japan detects extraordinary high levels of radioactivity off the coastline of Sendai, Miyagi, Ibaraki prefectures. Japan announces cooling systems restored at the fuel pools number 1 to 4, May 29, 2011. So there was that's the cover story was coming in right there. That's a really important headline, that one right there. How can you restore power at a fuel pool when it doesn't even exist? Anybody know the answer to that one? it's such a scumbag industry. Right there, like at the top of each of the buildings were the fuel pools, and there was around 8 reactor cores in each of the reactor buildings. There's 2 fuel pools at the top of each of the buildings. And so my volume button on one. So if I go, I have to go up to the center on my particular, not my master volume, but my main volume. And so my main volume controls left and right ears. And so if I don't center it every single time, I have to look around because I got so much crap in front of me. I have to look around every time I touch it to make sure I'm in the center. Because otherwise you're going to have more sound in one ear than the other ear, right? The volumes will be off-centered. So my volumes, and I can look up there and see it, but it's easier for me to, because I can see both of my meters. Both of my meters should rise and fall exactly at the same time, so that you get that stereo sound. It's a pretty impressive system I have. It took probably 9 months to, not master, I don't know if you'll ever master it, but 9 months to make it at least reasonable. Can't do no. This is the same stuff the big TV studios will use, right? Fears that the storm deluge could spread radiation from uncovered reactor buildings into the air. So they're this is May 29th also. They're calling, and the buildings look different than that originally. And I don't know if I can find you a picture quick enough. Because every time I deviate from the story that I already put together, you're adding time onto. I don't really give a shit, myself personally, but other people might. Here we go. And I really should put that picture up with that other pile because... So that's what the reactors look like. They were talking about a typhoon would spread the radioactive from the uncovered buildings. It's just, they're very unlikable people, this industry, I can tell you that much. So they're calling reactor 3, for instance, behind me uncovered. Reactor 3 actually ejected the entire 40-year inventories out of the buildings, 9 reactor cores. That's an extinction event for the planet anyway on its own. But we had 4 reactors do the same thing. Now, they didn't all eject it right out of the buildings. They burnt it and lost it all, right? Which means we contaminated the biosphere forever. Winds have turned hot particles to head south from Fukushima. Advice is to leave Tokyo if Unit 4 fuel pool collapses. So what did they do? They pretended that reactor 4 was still intact. This is just a fraction of the media. This is ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega. But in 2012, that's what it would have looked like. Like, it's missing, 4/5 of the building is missing. And the fuel pools that they're saying they're in, because like there's 70 identical reactors in the United States. And the trolls, man, back in the day, the trolls were really, they were vicious scum, eh? It was vicious. Now we have a lot more insight on who they were, but they were just disgusting. They were disgusting. They were university students in Taiwan, and that's one of the reasons Taiwan has gotten rid of nuclear, because what the students had done for the first 2 years. The universities, the nuclear is very pro-nuclear universities down there. It was a big industry, right? But they were, what they done was uncalled for. They had 2,000 students, university alumni, ex-students, professors. They had everybody in the industry. It was around 2,200 of them, I think the real number is, but I always say 2,000. And we covered it right back when that story broke, when they were doing... That story broke when They were going to have a referendum on importing food from the nuclear wasteland. And it was done by a pro-nuclear guy named Hong, who was a nuclear academic, nuclear physicist, that had went on a fake hunger strike to get it put on a ballot. The country voted it down. But 2 years later, they just started shipping it in because it was only good for 2 years. Imagine only having something like that good for 2 years. That's how evil that industry was. And that's why the politicians are getting rid of nuclear, because of what they've done to themselves. Nuclear radiation is the most carcinogenic thing that exists. And you had all these students every day in your comment section. And like before my shows would start, I used to get over 700-800 comments. Bananas and potato chips and walking in the sunshine. Dana's a buffoon. And Dana doesn't know nothing. And Dana Lloyd is like a banana. Dana Lloyd is like walking in the sunshine. Dana's lying. I used to leave it all there, right? And people used to get upset and fight with him. But the problem was most people didn't know how to beat him up properly. And so I couldn't keep up that disruption. So after about a year, I decided I was going to put an end to that stuff, right? Because people were being influenced, and I should have done it right away. I should have blocked the comments, period, right away, and got things under control. But they were monstrous. It wasn't just pre-show either, right? The preambles, they were in after the show. Yeah, but it did teach me a lesson I'll never forget. That these are scumbags. There is no good people there. Nobody ever apologized to me from that industry. These are worthless scum that there should be a Nuremberg trial, hunt every fucking one of them down, and they should be publicly executed after they're convicted. Even in 50 years, we should still do the same fucking thing to these people. They're not even people, are they? They're idiots because you destroyed everybody's future now. Right, a culture of scumbags. That's what the nuclear industry is. It's a culture of cowards, a culture of morons, and evil. They're just evil what they've done. The cover-up is still going on. It's so evil. We don't have anything to compare it to. It's so evil. We don't have anything on the planet to compare it to. It's a fucking omnicide against every species. I showed you that documentation earlier. And if you don't accept the truth, that's your fault. I was out there for 6 years. I'm not going to fucking deny the species are gone, okay? I'm not stupid. I'm old and broken, but I'm not stupid. Hang on a second. There we go. Japan confirms full meltdown at all 3 reactors. It was 4 fucking reactors. Right? They refused to acknowledge reactor 4 had very much damage, for goodness sakes. There's reactor 4 to your left. They came out and faked it to the right. But they did at one point acknowledge that there was 3 full meltdowns, 100%. Little fucking censorship against me tonight, man. That's really something, isn't it? Because being a coward is really easy to these people. That's all they're really good at, right? Hour and a half, and I only got 15 people. I only got 14 likes in an hour and a half. A fucking show I've been doing for a decade? You pieces of shit out there. You shit for fucking brains out there. Give me a call, you cowards. The people that are sent me, call me. Call me, you fucking morons. You morons, you cowards. I put my telephone number on the screen every day. I don't hide away like you fucking pieces of shit. You low-life scumbags. You fucking degenerates. You morons. You shit for brains. You cowards. How fucking dare you attack me like this? You haven't got a billionth of the integrity that I have, you fucking cowards. You worthless cowards. You cowards. You creepy little fucking cowards. You spineless little fucking rats. You hateful fucking scummy little bastards. Scumbag is a scumbag is a scumbag. Yeah, they have no balls, Dana. Integrity is not in the equation, is it? What's that doing there, I wonder? I gotta figure that out. Oh, I know. Clickety click. Okay, that's good. Hey, the Fukushima health study, 100 millisieverts a year is okay for pregnant moms. Microsieverts, sorry, 100,000 millisieverts. The effects of radiation don't come to people that are happy. You got any idea what kind of fucking voodoo that shit is? They come to people that are weak-spirited. This is the head of the Fukushima health study. The head, the doctor in charge of the health of the people in Fukushima. Says, and he done this on video, by the way. We have the video there somewhere. The effects of radiation do not come to people that are happy. So if you're happy, radiation can't fucking hurt you. See, people like that should get the death penalty. That's what the fucking death penalty is for. Plutonium, uranium flows into the ocean from Fukushima. Flows into the ocean. Heavily contaminated water, and they use the word leaking. People actually get their teeth kicked down their fucking throats. Melted fuel released hundreds of different radioactive material. Officials refuse to investigate 90% of them. It's more than that, 99. They only look at cesium. They don't even look at that. They just put out whatever number looks good to them. They're completely out of control. Like, we had 10, 20, 30 million atoms of cesium per cubic meter of air cover the entire fucking planet, particularly Canada, United States, right away. It's a French study. My Geiger counter should be reading something like 60,000 counts per minute of just gamma. I got a fucking inspector there on top of it. That's supposed to be a good Geiger counter. Curium plutonium outside of Fukushima plant indicate nuclear explosion. Broken spent nuclear fuel rods may have been scattered. How the hell do these people even sleep at night? Because when they published that in December, this picture was available on day 4. And that's reactor 3. How can you not acknowledge that you got at least 6 million pounds of reactor fuel is atomizing, aerosoling, and burning? Like the smoke of this building, the smoke of that explosion. Hang on, I got a good way to tell that. Lucky me. Lucky you. So you see the mess that you're making there. What made that? That's the fuel pool. Right above it, when you look up a little bit, you'll see the roof. Now, those big, what looks like a beam up there, that's not a beam, that's ductwork. That was added after. And that was meant to vent, and you can see the vents right in the top corner up there. You'll see 3 different vents up there. The hydrogen from the building. So when you look at the top, really, that's all you got. These vents are just aluminum, right? They're just really thin, galvanized metal, rather. So there's nothing up there to make a plume, a massive plume. Remember, this building is 19 stories, 65 meters, 190 feet tall. So what accounts? And so what you're looking at is the uranium. You're looking at non-reactor cores that are on fire. And that if you watch the video, you'll see, right, it's producing the plume as it's falling back down to Earth right away because there's so much material, because it's burning in the air. Curium-244 detected for the first time outside of Fukushima plant required lead shielding 20 times thicker than for plutonium-238. So what's worse, plutonium or curium? Curium is. What's the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rods? Is curium. Doesn't matter about gammas or alphas or neutrons and betas. What is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod? It's curium isotopes, right? We know that from the studies from Dr. Raymond Gilmedy from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, the Navy's Institute, the USS Navy's Research Center, Loveless, proper name, because they killed all the dogs and pets there, right? And the name of the place is Loveless. Hard cases. And when they first interviewed him, I found him in a story about New Mexico, about the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in 2014. We covered that live. In fact, they took a clip of my video and called me a conspiracy theorist. And the stuff that they clipped out, I was completely accurate on. And he was there he gave an interview. He didn't give an interview in the building because you got all the beagle dogs and beagle puppies barking, right? They done it outside the building. But anyway, that led me to 93 of his studies on beagle dogs and beagle puppies. They all died from the plutonium. So imagine what's going to happen with the curium, which you need lead shielding 20 times thicker for. Japanese media blackouted the words MOX, plutonium, and meltdown. And Dana Durnford. Lady Yaya promises to promote Japan as a safe destination. What a fucking cunt. I'm going to run around Tokyo, enjoy the beautiful city, kiss all the beautiful little fucking monsters, said the cunt. What a cunt to do what she done, eh? Where I come from, it's acceptable to call her that. I don't know about you, but where I'm from, it's acceptable to use that word in certain instances for people that are a fucking cunt like her. 6.46 microsieverts per hour outskirts of Tokyo. Oh, it's way worse than that. That would be a good day, and there's nothing good about it. And just a few meters away from where children on a playground. Alex, a Frenchman living in Tokyo. All of my videos regarding Fukushima were cancelled from YouTube, taken down off YouTube. Not one was left that morning. It was June the 20th, 2011. Nearly, this story really irked me when I looked at it this evening. Nearly 40% of the Fukushima evacuation personnel received a year's dose of radiation. Like, you're conflating man-made radiation with natural radiation. I'd like to find out who came up with that narrative and go kick the shit out of them every day for the rest of my life. Manure, excrement, shit from the cows. So the cows were excreting 255 counts per minute, I'm assuming per kilogram, in Southern California. And these are catastrophic numbers, by the way. And because you're only acknowledging gamma, you're not acknowledging any other isotopes. You're barely acknowledging gamma. It's just such a scumbag industry, every facet of it, isn't it? They don't have anybody there to admire whatsoever. There's no one there their names you're going to remember. There's no one there that you can relate to in the nuclear industry. The industry doesn't have a single fucking person that you can relate to. Oh, we're gone there now, are we? I've been swearing away here, not even paying attention. Oops. Well, they're not going to censor me anymore than they already censor me anyway, so that don't matter. Just, that's not normal. Sometimes I'll get pissed off, right? There's nothing I can do about it. I'm a human. Sometimes it's just too much for me. And if I don't vent a little bit, and I don't normally do it, right? I'm usually pretty good. Airlines make emergency landings in the Midwest. 4 passengers were held in a sterile room. Jetliner, look at this headline right there. Jetliner makes emergency landing after passengers faint. Why are you going to put them in a sterile room for fainting? What did they ever do to you? Well, they're radioactive, Dana. Yeah, I know. We actually covered some of the freedom of information about airplane companies were concerned how did they decontaminate their planes coming back from Japan, and the crew and the airplanes and all this, and they were reaching out to the scum of the scum, right, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And there's typically the links are below my videos to 4.3 emails. And I made it really easy for you for 2011, 2012, 2013. They're going to link you over to the Nuclear Regulatory. These were released through a Freedom of Information. 4.3 million, because nothing happened at Fukushima, clearly. And they're going to be PDF files. And any computer got out there right now will have no issues handling those type of files. Whereas years and years ago, it was an issue for a lot of people's computers. Right, because a lot of these headlines tonight you haven't seen probably in years and years and years. So it's a really good show to catch. But I can be pretty cynical sometimes because I'm hurt by what they do, right, and what they've done. Like, I'm impacted by these stories more than you are, I can tell you that much. And I'm pretty sure they impact you if you're watching this stuff. This is pretty hard. What we do is hardcore. It's hardcore, man. There's no more hardcore show on the fucking planet than this one right here. We are, unfortunately, we're it. We're real as it gets. You don't get any more real than this show. We've done it all. We went out and done all the research. We've aggregated fucking terabytes of this stuff. We've done so much research. It's absurd how much documentation we've gathered up. And we're versed in these narratives, this documentation. We're versed for accuracy. We're very accurate. We take painstaking amount to make sure that I don't even make a Freudian slip. And you will, though. It's impossible not to make a Freudian slip, right? Oh, not so quick there, because the industry loves to chop it out and eventually string it together and say, see, Dana doesn't know shit, right? And that'll get 1 million views in a week. Stinkfoot got one of those videos up there, over 1 million views. It's total fraudulent how he done it, right? But it's done to demonize me, right? And TEPCO hired him. I posted a video in the video section. This is the live stream section you're watching this stuff on. But a couple of days ago, I posted a video of Calm Down Charlie's, one of his threats from Tokyo government. The Tokyo government has an operation against me to smear me. It's called Operation Long Jump. And I fuck with him, right? You're like, what? Operation Long Jump? You're like, no, Operation Long Jump! And like, Operation Long Jump? And I hadn't gone there for a while. Oh, Mr. Dana. I like to have his head on a mantle, stuffed. I would imagine in the future that might be legal. Nuclear fallout will engulf Taiwan and South Korea. They warned the children to stay home and people. This is really interesting. We got the rest of the documentation of this particular one. I'm going to clip it out, actually, and put it over my old shit pile, my never-ending holy shit pile. Man, it's hard to appreciate with my old shit pile that I'm always throwing stuff into. It's something, man. I can do like 3 books just on that pile. Immediately take off your clothes and cleanse the nuclear material. So we don't really go through the fine stuff, right? We just usually show the headlines. Boosted by the southward movement of cold air from the Chinese mainland, these northeast winds will push a cloud of strontium and radioactive iodine. You can't have just radioactive iodine and strontium. You're going to have 1,000 other fission products. Towards Taiwan from a distance of 2,500 kilometers. And then the weakening high pressure over Taiwan will draw in the fallout. They're very aware, aren't they? Which will engulf the whole island for at least 2 days from April the 6th Do you really think it's like just going to blow over your island? It's like a snowstorm or something? People should stay home while the nuclear fallout is here. Well, it's never going to go away when it comes to it. In order to avoid a prolonged exposure. A specialist with the Veterans General Hospital said, adding, those who must go out should immediately take off their clothes and cleanse the nuclear contaminants from their bodies as soon as they're back home. Well, you shouldn't leave. People should wear long-sleeve clothing and masks even on a sunny day, and carry an umbrella if it rains. The Atomic Energy Council, Bruce Lee. I'm making that last part up, sorry. People should wear long-sleeve clothing and masks when they go out. Taiwan Atomic Energy Council Li Zhou-Chang, who also recommended cleansing showers, but not iodine tablets and table salt. Why not? It's too late. I'm always confused when I see that one, right? Japan raised the limits 75 times higher than the shit for brain World Health Organization, UN, had it. This is an important story right here you haven't seen too often, but it's super important because you've heard me mention it quite a bit. Nearly 3,000 evacuees were rushed to hospital by ambulance from shelters in Fukushima, Iwate, Miyagi. And so the caveat to that, to appreciate that particular story, you're going to have to, if you haven't already seen it, you need to come over to this is my main page. I haven't gained a subscriber now in months. So scroll down a little bit, not very far, and, oh yeah, I done audit of Stanford University right there. They're 3 hours and 30 minutes, but don't let that deter you. This one is 4 hours and 15 minutes. Don't let that deter you. That was Harvard University. So I took their presentation, which is typically an hour long, and if they told a lie, I stopped the video and explained the lie each time. And this was the MIT Department of Nuclear Science and Engineering. So this was their official videos from 2011 response to the Fukushima nuclear event. And when you see the videos are, the original videos are an hour, say, and my videos are 3 hours and 30 minutes, 4 hours and 14 minutes, 3 hours and 17 minutes, because I had to try to explain the lie every time they told you a lie. And we went through the whole fucking thing. I done 3 of them in a row because I'm an idiot. I'm a sucker for punishment. And I definitely got punished pulling that stunt off. And then if you really want to learn, you got to go back to my March the 14th anniversary. Fukushima 14th anniversary of the world's biggest nuclear cover-up. Fukushima 14th anniversary of the disease deaths, nuclear wastelands. There's 8 of them. I know I'm asking a lot. And then you can go back to the Freedom of Information Act releases. Inside the Bizarre Mind of the Pro-Nuclear. That's a great video. And Facts, Small Modular Reactors, another really important one. The Darkness of MIT, that's probably an important one too. UN Watchdog Chief visits Fukushima. That's another important one. He went there to pick up a $14 million check. Like he does every anniversary, picks up a great big check. Those anniversary videos, each one of them are designed to fill in the blanks. And so there's 8 of them. But there's a preamble leading up to the anniversary, and then there was like a wind down after. So just because I got 8 Fukushima 14th anniversary videos, you need that whole series, because that's how complicated the story is, and that's how much information you need to try to absorb to get the whole story. Now, let's say you've done that. You actually went and downloaded all of these or watched them all or whatever. There's nobody on the planet going to beat you in a conversation on facts about nuclear or Fukushima, ever. And you can make decisions by extrapolating the facts for the rest of your life. That's a pretty cool thing. Because this is not a game. My 3 Mile Island is a watch video too. And one of my YouTube videos, they deleted sections of it And I posted that over in the video section up here. And the 736 Fukushima mystery pictures I talked about earlier, and I showed you one of those pictures, that's a super important video too. Now, like I do all these videos, and we're always bringing you new information. But those particular videos are saturated with different documentation. That's how fucked up this industry actually is, see? That's how creepy, fruity loop this industry actually is. 17 votes, really, that's all I got. I'm almost into 2 hours. I only got 16 fucking likes on my video, you piece of shit planet that's censoring me. Not the people that are watching me, but the people that are censoring me. You fucking cowards out there. You morons. You shit for brain cowards. You spineless turds. You gutless fucking morons. You gutless fucking morons. You just go tell your friends and your families and your loved ones what you do for a fucking living, how you censor people like me, you piece of shit. You won't, right? Because you're not fucking stupid, you're just a piece of shit. So if you go watch the Harvard video that I showed you, Gordo is the nuclear expert. I call him Gordo. Gordo will explain to you that up to 10 kilometers away from the nuclear plant, the plume, the radioactive fallout from the plume was lethal doses. And a lot of these people didn't get out. So 3,000 evacuees were rushed to hospital because they had significant radiation damage. But they tried to blame it. The industry still does it. They'll put out story after story after story sometimes where they'll blame that on stress. And we've seen post-Fukushima supercell typhoons, supercell cyclones, supercell hurricanes, one after another. We've never seen pre-Fukushima, where millions and millions and millions of people are evacuated. We've never seen even a dozen people rush to hospital, let alone 3,000. Fukushima was the only event where we've seen that particular attribute. And that was radioactive fallout, and they've done everything they can to muddle that fact. It's a fucking disgusting industry. It's a hateful, despicable, evil. It's evil. It's not evil like in belligerence. It's evil in cowardness. The people that do it are incredible cowards. They're incredibly educated, right? They go to universities and they get educated. They get degree after degree after degree, and the university is thinking about hiring them because they can recite the entire fucking book. They're dysfunctional. They won't go out and get a job. The nuclear industry will get approached by the university, and the university will snatch them up. They're like functional autism type people. And the majority of the industry, you put these people, give them a haircut and put a $5,000 suit on them, they look like normal people. They're fucking not normal people. And that's what the industry now, inbreed, and then they started inbreeding among themselves. And so that concurrent generation of fucking inbreeds is now the entitled lot, and they're in charge of the nuclear industry. And they're just beyond dysfunctional. They're literally the stupidest creatures you'll ever talk to. Plutonium, pneumonia cases surged in Japan's Tohoku region, the whole country. Frequency of pneumonia also increased after Chernobyl. This was symmetrical right around the planet after Fukushima for the first couple of years. Right, because lung and respiratory problems are, after a nuclear meltdown, means you got poison. They do huge studies continent-wide after major releases. Even a low dose will cause cancer. This was TV broadcasting a warning about internal radiation exposure, because this stuff is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison on top of that, per atom. Many baby seals dying of leukemia. You never heard of that before Fukushima, have you? What was that one on the bottom? Doctors removed 6 thyroids from the USS Ronald Reagan crew after Fukushima. Some coincidence. Japan professor outbreak of cancer is underway in Fukushima children. I got that nuclear Belgium song in my head, man, today. To the point I had to download it. What am I looking for? Oh yeah, hang on. One of the best things, I think, is I got a really good memory. I've been doing it for so long, consistent, right? But that's also one of the worst things about because I got a good memory. Because, well, you know, when I'm doing these shows, what's going in the back of my mind, I'm not always going to be able to articulate during the show, right? But I've covered this so much I can visually see it. That's not a good thing, trust me. Japan National Cancer Center said the number of patients rose by 865,000 in 2012, a year after Fukushima. They stopped releasing the data after that. Not everybody had health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Cancer is not the only illness and disease and autoimmune deficiency and injury or illness to manifest from radiation. There's heart problems, liver problems, leukemia, thyroid. And when you have thyroid, you're producing radioactive hormones. You're talking about an endless range of issues because that dictates the function of your body, right? It's the same thing for your pituitary gland too, right? And if that's going to be true, then you're going to have, and the reason you got leukemia is because you have your skeleton is producing radioactive stem cells. And remember leukemia, they were talking about that for all the seals and sea lions and cancer for all the starfish and shellfish and fucking mussels and clams and snails. And where did the 30,000 insects in the high tide zone go, I wonder? Authorities are hiding the truth from the world. Many young people in Fukushima who are in high school have died suddenly, heart attacks. There was 2 students and a teacher in one day, overnight, had died in their sleep in the Fukushima city. Doctors near Tokyo attributing symptoms to radiation exposures. We have begun to see increases in nosebleeds, stubborn cases of diarrhea, flu-like symptoms in children. So remember, it's not just cancer, right? This manifests in so many ways. It's so heartbreaking. It breaks my fucking heart all the time, every fucking day. You know, I'm sitting there putting these stories each day. You really think that doesn't affect the fuck out of me every day? And then I sit here and try to tell the story at nighttime, and sometimes I get overwhelmed and I'll start swearing and fuck everything up. It's still fucking winter down here. Everybody else is fucking in a heat wave. I guess I shouldn't complain, I suppose, but I'm still wearing long johns. That is what it is. You're still going strong, are we? I want to get the rest of the show out there. I'm going to keep going. Fuck it. I haven't got that much left if I just shut up and start doing the show. All right, let's finish this out. It'll take a bit, but already hearing reports of kids suffering heart attacks. Hang on. Let me show you what that means. Because if not, then the nuclear industry, well, why didn't he show you the documentation? He's always got it. He's got it right there. Because it's not true. That's why. He's a liar. I got so many dedicated trolls. I can't keep track of them all. Well, a lot of them will do it for free, attack me for free, right? So they can brag in the lunchroom later. Yeah, fuck Durnford over it. What am I supposed to be doing here? Heart attacks. Okay, hang on. There's all these... I don't have like folders. I have folders that are full of folders. It's just, I have so much of it. It's just hard to appreciate it sometimes, even myself. Sometimes it shocks me, man. I said we ended up with this show tonight. I opened up a folder and we're like, oh, for fuck's sakes, I got all this shit there I forgot about. So I got to start clicking because I'm stupid. Heart attacks, eh? The death rates might give the creeps to some people. Extreme increase of mortality caused by heart diseases, heart attacks. In a single month, there was an extra 12,700 people dying of heart attacks, 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. There was 14,200 children of 100,000 need open heart surgery. There's 13,646 out of 38,200 with thyroid tumors over 2 centimeters. That's how big their thyroid is, for fuck's sakes. Which means they're producing radioactive stem cells on top of that as they're developing. Imagine what's happening to the birds and the bees and the animals in the trees. Then you're starting to get on the right track. And then you can appreciate why I'm fucking angry so much. University of Pittsburgh radiation experts, child cancer risk doubles if exposed to a couple of x-rays worth of radiation while pregnant. This is a fucking incredible statement. Top radiation experts, 50 atoms a kilogram in humans lead to irreversible lesions. Look up the word irreversible, you pro-nuclear fucks out there. In the vital organs. Nuclear controversies. What the fuck is controversy? It's a fact. So 50 atoms, you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. How the fuck are you going to avoid 50? Huh? Huh? I know. Pick up speed, Dan. 6 in 10 Fukushima children tested of diabetes. Tokyo newspaper, and the same Tokyo newspaper is now like, nothing got out. The IEEE said so. Imagine how cruel the International Atomic Energy Agency got to be to ignore everything I'm showing you. Just try to wrap your mind around that statement. Every fucking one of them should be tried in court with my documentation, then convicted, and then executed publicly so everybody can fucking enjoy it. The head of the Tokyo area medical clinic, we're expecting diabetes in children from Fukushima radiation. The only way the world can heal itself is if we try everybody in the nuclear industry for crimes against humanity. And they get the death penalty for it. Like, we have the evidence, okay? Do you got any idea? Like, if I was like Greenpeace, if I had a big foundation fund me, and I was like Greenpeace, you have any fucking idea how many people I would be litigating in the nuclear industry, dragging into court, and convicting them of crimes? I would say I would need a team of lawyers, at least 500 high-class lawyers, to take down all these fuckers, because it's easy to convict them. It's easy to get the evidence. And you should do it. You know they're going to kill me at some point. Peer-reviewed study shows 14,000 U.S. people died. That study was updated to 20,000 2 weeks later. That dropped dead of heart attacks. We've seen similar numbers for infant mortality spikes, too. Post-Fukushima. Evidence linking nuclear plants to ill health is increasingly compelling. Well, the nuclear fuel pools at every plant are still splitting atoms. You really think that's like fucking fairy dust? Each reactor core in the fuel pool is still splitting atoms for 1 million homes and businesses. There's no containment. That's what the tall, skinny stacks are for on site. It's a fucking scumbag industry. It's just a stupid, evil industry. And the industry knows it's evil. It don't have any illusions. Like, they get a kick out of censoring me, right? It's a big thrill for them. They laugh about it and they carry on about it all the time. They probably fucking do sick shit in the dark listening to it. Evidence linking nuclear plants to ill health. Clear something is going on. UK government blames unidentified virus for childhood leukemia clusters. We've covered the study, about this. They actually produced a study saying to children, the reason there was clusters alongside of not Windscale, but Sellafield in the United Kingdom, the nuclear processing facility, the massive disease factory. There's cancer clusters of children, leukemia, which is it's a bone disease, right? And it manifests in your blood as because of the mutated stem cells they're producing. After working in an affected area, 4 workers have died, victims of leukemia or heart attacks. was 300 police officers died of kidney failure and heart attacks in just like by year 6. That was in guarding, keeping people out of the no-go zone, so to speak. Stood up with a stupid fucking paper mask on. This stuff is 600 times smaller than the holes in those masks, right? Even the full face mask can't filter. You can't filter this stuff. Like, all the atoms are the same fucking size. If you're breathing any kind of atoms coming through the filter, then radiation is too. Radiation, of course, if you're in a nuclear wasteland, you're getting pounded with gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas, and by proxy X-rays. Japan, increasingly rare thyroid abnormalities found in 40% of the Fukushima children, indicating a really high dose of radiation, higher than Chernobyl. Incredibly rare thyroid abnormality found in 40% of the Fukushima children. That study is here, I think. We'll show you that coming up. 13,646 out of 38,200 is 35.8%, which is 358,000 out of a million. When it used to be 1 in a million. Legal expert, 3 police died of acute leukemia after being sent to Fukushima within 50 kilometers of the... Yeah, it's over 300. That's 2013. I think by 2016 the numbers came out. It was around... Yeah, 300. That was the number. Staggering number of cancers, illnesses, and birth defects linked to nuclear waste. In this one area, there was 700 cases of cancers, illnesses, and birth defects linked to nuclear waste in a 4 square kilometer area. Nuclear is humanity and the 8 million species mortal enemy. And for 80 years now, we can trace back the extermination of the species, the decline of the species directly to the nuclear testing. And the nuclear dumping, what they done during the Manhattan Project, the dumping, the pieces of shit, buddy. You fucking pieces of shit that done that, you scumbags. You fucking lowlife that done that. Like Hanford, what they 450 billion gallons directly into the fucking soil of stuff that's splitting atoms. That's equal to a nuclear aquarium 6 feet wide, 518 feet tall, wrapped around the entire fucking planet more than once. Of nuclear waste. Oh no, it can all fit in a fucking swimming pool down there. You shut your mouth, man. None of them will ever say that to my face, I can tell you that much. They won't have one left. Here's a lovely story. U.S. Navy sailor, our digital watches stopped working after when offshore Fukushima. We were laughing at first, and then we said, oh shit. Well, I mean, they plugged up the toilets. Everybody was defecating in the hallways. Everywhere else. Like, I'm not making this up. Radiation poisoning, right? And when your fucking watches stop, all your digital watches are stopping at the same fucking time, and you won't take care of these people. Everybody turned on them. Nuclear industry fucked them over really good. 5,000 people. Only thing that's important is scumbag nuclear. That's all that's important. Nuclear has to destroy every species and everything on this planet and consume every precious resource in order to continue to exist. And that's what they're doing. And we're in real fucking trouble. Post-Fukushima, holy shit, we're in real trouble. Our digital watches stopped working when offshore Fukushima. We were laughing at first. Man, that's one of the most frightening statements conceivable. Physicians report increased cancers around nuclear sites, birth defects, stillbirths, spontaneous abortions are on the rise. Plutonium escaped Fukushima reactor as a gas. It was a colossal 9,000 degree Fahrenheit inside. Can't be detected with Geiger counters. Terrible things are looming for the children. They must be evacuated, yet nothing was done. It's criminal. And I'm very worried too, yes. Situation in Fukushima is beyond imagination. Young and old dead from heart attacks. Young women dying of leukemia. Radioactive stem cells, right? Fukushima radiation is killing children. Heart problems, leukemia, thyroid. I mean, children that didn't even gain an extra pound in a year. Never stopped nose bleeding. We need to admit many are dying, but we're not allowed to say it because the nuclear industry is just despicable. It's fucking despicable. It's such a coward industry. Everybody in it. And there's not a single person in the nuclear industry that's likable. And even their families will tell you. Like if you were a friend of their family, when they're not around, they say, like, yeah, he's a weird. He makes good money, though. He's a good provider for the family. Horses became weak and died one by one from an unknown cause in a nuclear wasteland. Really. Country's going mad. Yeah. Me too, motherfuckers. Workers are dumping radioactive waste from Fukushima into the rivers. How many fucking headlines we got of that stuff over a couple of year period? Because they're the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language. They're only going to do what the guys with the tattoo tells them, right? At 13 locations in Naraha, Lydiat, and Tamura, workers were seen simply dumping the radioactive debris. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. They probably dumped twice that into the rivers and lakes and estuaries and coastlines. 20 workers who were just following their orders, like a good little Nazis. We were told to clean up only those areas around the measurement sites. So they had stationary Geiger counters, and they would only clean up around there, and they would put down fresh steel plates below it to keep the numbers down. Japan TV, oh my. 180 microsieverts per hour. We can never live here. That's low doses in Japan on top of that. Japan is just absurd. And they're only looking at gamma. They're not looking at alphas, betas, neutrons because the industry is so fucking disgusting. Thick iron shielding. Placed thick iron shielding. Like, can you visualize what I'm talking about? So, you know, like a normal piece of metal, you can pick it up and do whatever you want with it. You're not going to fucking pick that up and hold it up here because it's thick iron. Probably 70, 80, 90 pounds for like a 2 foot by 2 foot section. Dose was double 5 meters away. Again, you're only measuring gamma. Photographer X-ray-like images show how radioactivity is spread throughout the bodies of the wildlife, and even provided a picture. So the radiation damage will show up on there for certain things. And the same thing with plants, by the way. Nothing happened, Dana. Mom, nuclear scientists all over the fucking world are in their basements crying right now. Mom, come down. Dana's lying. Eventually, 6,000 people were assumed to have evacuated from a high radiation area. They had not. Eventually happened 3 months after the meltdown. The government doctor came and said, okay, to eat the local food. And everybody's moved, not everybody, but a big chunk of the population was tricked into going back into Lydiat 6 years later, 6 years later. This story is crazy. This just shows you one of the legacies of this fucked up industry. U.S. government might as well keep swearing out. Once I descends into that abyss, I might as well keep on going with the flow. U.S. government secretly injected people with... I don't normally swear a lot, right? But sometimes I can't take it anymore. And everybody fault me for swearing, you can go fuck off somewhere. Today, anyway. Come back tomorrow. U.S. government secretly injected people with plutonium. Sometimes if I don't swear, I feel... I shouldn't swear, I know that. I apologize for it. I always do, but it doesn't work. Somewhere it's going to happen again because I can't handle it sometimes. I just can't stand to see the harm. U.S. government secretly injected people with plutonium. This is such a sick story. I'm not laughing because it's funny. That's the gallows laugh. Disabled school children were fed radioactive oatmeal. Disabled school children. Can you imagine nuclear scientists? Stay still. Eat your fucking oatmeal. Eat your fucking oatmeal. That's what they're like, right? You would pinch them. You get them to open their mouth so they put the oatmeal into their face. And then when they died, they incinerated their poor little bodies and sniffed it for the plutonium. Citizens were injected with plutonium without their knowledge, but it's certain that no one administered the dose for the person's health, although radium was still being touted by unscrupulous companies to the masses as a health tonic. But this was the 40s. I can show you the headlines. The radium, what the products like radium hand cream, radium soap, radium polish. That was some sick fucking shit. Clean all your table, all your dinnerware, clean your counters, clean everything, polish your car. That's what you want. That's why I won't buy antiques. Because a lot of that was sold, man. That stuff don't even start to decay for 5,000 years. Although radium was still being touted by the unscrupulous companies to the masses as a health tonic. I almost vomited when I was reading that today. Enough people had gotten cancer and radiation sickness that any scientist knew the radiation was bad news. And since the beginning of the Manhattan Project, tests have been done to see how plutonium isotopes affect the living beings. In December of 1946, the Manhattan Project ordered a halt to the injections of humans with radioactive material, at which point the Atomic Energy Commission took over in April of 1947, possibly in response to the Nuremberg trials concerning human experimentation. So they still should be prosecuted for this. It was recommended that the patients be told that they would be injected with a new substance and that no one knew what it did and that it could inhibit cancer growth. Yet that was what caused the cancer. Fucking scumbags. In a Massachusetts school, 73 disabled children were spoon-fed oatmeal laced with radioactive isotopes. What the fuck, man? In an upstate New York hospital, an 18-year-old woman believing she was being treated for a pituitary disorder was injected with plutonium. At a Tennessee clinic, 829 pregnant women were served vitamin cocktails containing radioactive iron and other isotopes as part of their regular treatment. What treatment? It's poison. And so those children, when they died, they were buried, then they were exhumed by the government in secrecy and taken to the Los Alamos National Laboratory and incinerated, and they sniffed the ashes in the air for the isotopes. Now, these are not acts of terrorism by common criminals. This is the nuclear industry. They are the biggest terrorists on the planet is nuclear scientists. These are just some of the secret human radiation experiments that the United States government conducted on unsuspecting Americans for decades as part of its atomic bomb program. 829 pregnant women were served radioactive cocktails. Children, disabled children, almost 80 of them, fed radioactive oatmeal. You tell me this is not a sick fucking industry, and that their children's children are probably in power today. The same fucking scumbags. That entitled idiot machine that they got now in the nuclear industry. Like the people that work for the nuclear industry right now are the lowest fucking... They're so disconnected from the human experience. There's no books or movies. There's no counseling to ever bring them back to the human experience. They don't know what the fucking... They don't have any empathy whatsoever. In fact, they had come up with a cure for apathy, and they stopped it. Because the industry would go fucking broke if people had a conscience. They're just completely... They should be completely destroyed, everybody in the industry. They should be destroyed like you would destroy moldy bread. I can't remember. Radioactive plague for lotus eaters in Japan. Results were astonishing, says researchers. Insects, along with two students in October, went to Lydia, the village located, we covered it a little bit earlier, 30 kilometers from the nuclear plants where hot spots of high radiation were discovered. About 4,000 atoms of radioactive cesium-137, cesium-134 were detected in the grasshoppers, and 500 weighing a cumulative 1 kilogram. That level far exceeds Japan's regulatory limit of 500 becquerels per kilogram. So that was 2011. In 2012, they brought it down. In late 2012, they brought it down to 100 becquerels a kilogram. Because the first year they had 865,000 extra cancers show up. And so a lot of this food was shipped to Canada at that point. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. And so Canada, United States, and Europe raised their limits from around 100 to 1,100 atoms per kilogram. And then Japan raised it to 500 and would say, well, America and Europe is over 1,000 atoms a kilogram. We're only 500. But those numbers were created post-Fukushima. And those people should be prosecuted. And it'd be impossible not to convict them of crimes against humanity. All of these fucking people. Right? And the people that are censoring me are leaving a digital trail, right? At some point, we're going to be getting them too. I can fucking tell you that. Now, I have every right to be angry. I wallow in all this fucking excrement every fucking day. At some point, it's going to tear my guts open and destroy my soul, right? There's many times that happens to me. I'm pretty resilient, but my heart hurts for all the victims. And I see the victims when I'm going through this stuff, putting it together. I understand it. We can't even find spiders in the woods down there. It should be 500,000 per acre, right? You'll find them on your house. You'll deform webs on top of that, and very little species might show up, just barely enough to keep them alive. But normally in the woods, you would just check the webs to see what species were in that area. There's nothing in there. They're tied on to man-made objects. You'll see skinny webs to your vehicle or to your garbage or to a shovel handle or something like that. But not from trees and bushes, because the radiation rises up from the ground through the root system and aggregates at the top of the plants. And so the spiders can't tie on to it because they can perceive it, see? Not only that, they stop reproducing. And then the species that are depending upon them, like the birds who raise their fledglings, the little small birds, might have, for a number of years, they were having eggs, but they weren't hatching, or they weren't surviving. They would just die right away. Leading director in Japan, nuclear power generation, the only invention may destroy the future of humanity. Not may, it's guaranteed now. Economists, enormous spread of radiation, levels so high in the hills of Lydia that the locals dare not go near there. 150,000 microsieverts a year outside the official's home. These are absurd numbers. And they're only measuring gamma. Remember that. Well, we're almost there. Holy shit, 6 more to go or something. Nursery school taking field trips so kid can play in areas with less radioactivity. 800% higher radiation dose at the school. So you're supposed to abandon the fucking school, stupid. Radiation levels doubled within 20 days of decontamination by the Japanese forces. Not Japanese forces, it's the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the fucking language. Urine now radioactive, measuring at least 3,000 microsieverts in all 15 people tested. These, because they're only looking for gamma. Let me explain to you, because it's been a while since I've done that. What happened that year? That was a busy fucking year. And I was thinking to myself, you know, I'm going to look up the top stories of 2011 to see what kind of distraction. Because I remember there was a lot of stories would get amazing traction in 2011. So like the massive earthquake and tsunami, people didn't think about radiation. Only the people that were worried, that were aware of it pre-Fukushima, were the people that were paying attention, right? Everybody else was just And you know, you can't blame them. It was pretty wild to watch the tsunamis and the videos that were emerging constantly. And the media just focused on that. And yeah, they mentioned the nuclear meltdown, but they always gave you an apologist that downplayed it, and then he went back to the devastating earthquake and tsunami, right? So let's just walk through the 10 headlines, the top 10 stories. There was more than this. But then you start to appreciate how that your media ran these stories way longer than they normally would run them. So Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, who allegedly died in 2001 or something, at a U.S. Navy base on a kidney dialysis machine. But they allegedly killed him and took his body out in the ocean and dumped it in the ocean, as if that makes any sense. And then the people that killed him, their helicopter crashed after, and they couldn't tell the story. The Egyptian president, Hosni Mubarak, quit. Well, he was overthrown, right? They hit him with, I think, a heart attack machine or something. The president of Tanzania fled, which sparked copycat protests that became the Arab Springs. They were burning cities and towns and everywhere all over the place. Gaddafi was killed by rebels, and he was killed live streamed on YouTube. And the so-called rebels weren't who they claimed they were. This was the American government's rebels. And they cut his behind open with a knife and used a stick. And he done this on YouTube, live streaming on YouTube. That made huge... And then as that country was destroyed at the same time, there was big news stories, right? Prince William married... that was like a 3-week or fucking deal on TV. Not that I ever watched TV, but I remember everybody was always talking about it. It was always in the news every time I was trying to find other stuff. The English riots hit their peak in London. Remember all the burning in the streets? Apple co-founder Steve Jobs died. That was a major shitstorm. And I had put out a video, and I never got a single view. I had 25,000 subscribers at the time, right? The English riots began at the back of a peaceful protest. Shooting of Mark Duggan in London. That ran like 3 or 4 weeks in the news cycle. And Kim Jong-il died that year, right? That was... They ran that into the floor for weeks and weeks and weeks. So the whole year played out in the most unexpected way. What do we got going on here? Where am I to? Right there? Okay, there we are. What do we got going on here? Oh, James got another song up. That nuclear Belgium, man. I love that. That's amazing. It's nuclear injustice. Now, James does a lot of different genres, like, which is really, really convenient, by the way. Oh, well, I think I swore myself out tonight. I'm fucking sorry, okay? Sometimes that's how it goes. If you don't like it, then come back to next show. I'm usually pretty good. But I don't tell people how to live their life. They shouldn't tell me. You don't have the stress that I got in my life, trust me. I deserve to swear in this industry a few times. Here we go. Nuclear, let's bring that up. Nuclear injustice. God bless you, James. Putting out another song. I'm going to adjust the volume on my end. And make sure we don't hurt your speakers on your end. Make sure it's in 1080. We'll see you tomorrow, hopefully. We're on a bit of a roll here the last 3 weeks. Have a good one. Take care. Looks like I've done something. Oh, the volume's turned off down there. I started again. My apologies.
Just delay all approvals, no escape, all recorded, out of shape. This is nuclear.
That was great, man. Wow. Love it. James is on a roll. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow.